Join our knowledgeable hosts as they dive into the captivating universe of comic books, movies, TV shows, and pop culture. Get ready for vibrant discussions and a shared enthusiasm for all things superhero and beyond. A comic podcast straight from the panels. This is Beyond the Capes.
All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Cape podcast. With us today, returning guest Tim Mulligan. We read his first tale, Witchland. Little fact, little fiction, great story. We're here to talk about the continuation of that story. Welcome back to the show.
Hey, Ryan, thank you. It's really great and fun to be here.
And we're happy to have you back. Now, for everyone listening, if you haven't heard our previous episode, which I feel like we did quite a little bit ago for Witchland. This is a story that you've been working on for quite a while. For everyone that's not familiar.
Yeah, I mean, I started writing. I wrote Witchland first as a play when COVID struck, so during 2020, and then I just kept going and turning and then turned it into these graphic novels. So I've been working on this for a while now, a couple of years. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think the best part of your story for everyone listening, especially, is that this is not, I mean, to a degree, the story is made up, but you've drawn a lot of inspiration from real life events. I mean, the history is there.
Completely. I mean, it's my family. I mean, the main family in the story. It's plays and graphic novels, but we're here to talk about the new graphic novel, Snitchland. But the main family in the graphic novels is based on my family, my immediate family. It's my hometown. I was born and raised there. Most of my friends and family live there now. I worked out at the Hanford nuclear reactor. It's a real place. It's still having these issues we can talk about with kind of nuclear radioactivity and toxic, waste. And then also, but then the things that happen in the stories, whether it be the tunnel that collapsed out there and also the witch from Witchland, that's all based on my life and things I went through. And in this story, I did a ton of research on whistleblowers and folks who have brought, safety concerns or health concerns to the forefront. And there's many tales of retribution that's happened when you bring. And I've been in the business place for a long time, and whistleblowers can, there's a fear of retaliation. So I did a lot of research into actual stories and put that into Snitchland. So it's fictional, but it's all based on a real place, real people, and my interpretation of a lot of the stories that I've researched.
Definitely. So that brings us to the whole reason we're here. As you said, we're here to talk about Snitchland, the continuation from Witchland, which is interesting because Witchland, you ended it so perfectly, where we were kind of left in a sense of, did this really happen, or was this just the town being sick that was leading us to these delusions? And then we get this other. So now we get this other story. We pick back. You pick up about a year later after the events. Van, the kind of the main leader of the family, he's passed away. So we've learned that, maybe he wasn't so crazy. Maybe there was something going on. Maybe it was being cursed. Maybe it was the toxicity. In this part of the story, we definitely focus on what happened to him in the tunnel from the first book.
Yeah. I mean, in the first book, Witchland, it tells the story of two guys who are married, Jared and Van, and they have a daughter. Their black daughter. They're both two white guys who've been married a while. They have an adopted daughter they've raised named Allie, and they move to this place because one of them gets a job working out at the infamous Hanford nuclear reactor, which is now a cleanup of a giant nuclear reactor kind of mess. And while they're there, a tunnel collapses at the workplace, and this is based on a fact that there's been a lot of issues out there, but this was based on, I have friends who actually worked out there when this tunnel collapsed in 2017, and all the workers really had to take cover and stay in their office all day and not come out. And there's tales of folks who were at the site during the tunnel collapse who actually, got sick and experienced, some trauma afterwards. So I based it on that. But to your point, there's also, because I love horror, I love supernatural, I love the occult, and I threw a witch in because I grew up with next to a house that had this woman who was supposed to be a witch. And so, like you said, you don't know if this family is experiencing all this trauma and sickness because of they're being exposed to radiation, or did they get cursed by a witch, across the street.
Exactly.
So, like you said, one of them does not live, actually. And in Snitchland, we learn right away that the tunnel collapse could have been stopped, and there have been complaints made about this tunnel, that could have stopped it from happening. And it becomes more of a mystery of the remaining family members trying to get to the heart of how their beloved family member, father and husband, could have been spared and others could be spared. And so it gets into a mystery slash thriller of kind of what whistleblowers go through. And it exposes this whole kind of network of, which it actually exists, whistleblowers that have been wronged, and there's an organization that helps them. And so it becomes a mystery, trying to get the heart of, could this have been stopped and why? And of course, me loving, the occult and supernatural, I really wanted to write a ghost story. So this is really a ghost story where the the the, the husband who has passed, he leads them along as much as he can from his recently entree into the afterlife.
Yeah, I mean, and that was the incredible part. I think the first few scenes that set up this book, which really led you astray, at least for me, because I mean, obviously he's here, he's talking to these people, and it wasn't out of the normal. I thought, okay, this makes sense from the first book. He also now understands that this isn't right, what's going on. And it wasn't until like the third or fourth page where I started to realize that no one's actually like looking at him when he's talking. Um, that I know exactly where this is going, and the gut wrenching moment that hit me, because at the end of the first book, I mean, we see their whole family at the dinner table. Everything is, for the most part, kind of back to normal, with a little hint that maybe not everything is perfect. But I thought, all right, it kind of ended well, and then I said, oh no, it didn't end well. And that's what leads us into the story. Was it easy making that transition from writing Witchland, which, I mean, obviously you're still writing a supernatural occult book based on your stories, but now going from a witch to a ghost story, there are some nuances that definitely change the prose of it.
Yeah, I mean, these are my first actual writing projects, and this just all just, I mean, I'm no spring chicken. And so at a ripe young age of 55 or something, I started writing. And so this is all new for me, but I knew that I wanted to write a trilogy. I
Yeah,
knew that location was going to be ripe with stories, and I know it. They say write what you know, and I know that place. And so, but I also love horror, so I thought that let's write. And there's more than one story to be told. I think there's lots of stories I could work on there. So I wanted to write the first one that really dealt with kind of the history of Hanford, and there's a class action lawsuit called the Downwinders, of all these
yeah,
thousands of folks who got sick there from back in the early 50s. And so write that with the witch story, because I knew that was a great story. But then I like to drop some Easter eggs at the end. And so, what's next? And I really wanted the second novel to be completely different in tone, and be more of a thriller,
yeah.
like a whistleblower workplace thriller. But of course, I did want the supernatural elements in there. So I love ghost stories, and so I thought, if I could write a ghost story, uh, let's try it. And it is a challenge, writing about writing a ghost story. There's a lot of unknown of
Yeah.
what can ghosts do, what do they wear, why is a ghost haunting a house, or are they really haunting it? Do they go away after this thing is done? Do they always stay there? Can they move around across the city? And because in Snitchland there is the one ghost, of course, who's kind of narrating and helping the family move along. But also you see ghosts all over the city now of folks who died at this place, and because many have unfortunately perished out there, with due to the kind of proximity to the nuclear plant. So there's ghosts throughout the entire book. And I thought that would be interesting to see, this ghost kind of walking among us, And at some point, can they communicate with us? Can they touch us? Can they, and does it fade after a while? And what can they do? And so, I guess to answer your question, was it difficult? Yeah, it's really difficult. I really wrestled with, what, because if ghosts can do all these things and they'd be doing
Yeah.
all those things, if there's a ghost in this room with me right now warning me of something, why aren't they doing it? So, and why do some places that are haunted have that? um so I just wrote another story. I have a play that's going to New York next year, which I'm really excited about, based on a real life haunted house. It's a house that my friends own, and there's something there, and we've all experienced it. And and the question is, why and what's it doing? So it's interesting, but it was super fun. And I still wrote the thriller. I still wrote this whistleblower story. um but I really wanted to have a ghost story. I also wanted kind of a love story, and I wanted this, I love the movie Ghost, and I kind of was looking back to that to say, can I have something like that in this graphic novel, where these two men who were married for so long, one of them dies, can this love story continue once one of them passes away, and still have this thriller, but also have the heart, that I wanted as well.
Yeah. No, I was gonna say that's you're not the first person to say that, and that's why ghosts are I think a lot of people avoid writing them into books because you essentially have to make a set of rules
Hmm.
around these ghosts, and then you need to stick with these rules because you can't break them once you introduce them. And ghost, it's always a hard one to decide how much omnipotence do I give them, how much do I take away, where do I draw the line with that. So
Yeah.
that is always a tough one. I do think for this story though, it was the best choice because there was definitely the horror aspect of it. I think the ending was very, very dark, which I enjoyed. Um, but I think for the thriller aspect of it and almost a detective story, I definitely think that it lent itself really well for that story.
Thank you. And I think you also, I really want to make sure that, like Witchland and even the next novel that'll come out in February, I really wanted the daughter to be the hero and the
Yeah.
heroine. And so, she's away at college, but how can she come back now and help solve this mystery of why her father died, and could it have been prevented? And if so, who's hiding that and who's held accountable?
Definitely. Now, obviously, we know that we lost kind of a main character in this book. That's what's driving kind of our plot and our motive, our narration. Is it hard? I think for a lot of independent creators, when we talk to them, the idea to kill an original character, not only based on yourself, but kind of in your story that you might have gotten attached to, it is always a hard one because sometimes it's like, man, I could have really used them to tell more stories, but now kind of to drive the plot, I have to get rid of them. Was this a difficult choice?
Yeah, I mean, because it's based on myself and my partner. So yeah, I killed off my, I killed off my partner. But what I like about the concept is that I'm trying to I have this collection of characters that I really like, and I like that other ones now come into the forefront. So, in Snitchland, it really comes down to the family is still intact. One of them is just, guiding them from the ghost world, but some other characters from the first book and some new characters arise, which you'll see in the next book, that they take center stage. So I'm trying to kind of create this kind of, world of Witchland, where there's this a core set of characters, and the main family is going to always be kind of the center of it, but these other characters kind of orbit around them. And so yeah, I mean, I obviously, with one of the main characters dead now, and the ghost story now past us, as I go into the next story and beyond that, I need to focus on some new characters, and bring some new characters into the fray, and some new supernatural elements, which is really fun. 'Cause, like, what's next? And so the next one I'll talk about before we go probably is written as well. But yeah, it was a risky choice to write off one of the most popular characters of Witchland. This is also a play, and
Yeah,
the play keeps running. It's going to have a couple of big runs next year as well, and that character is very popular. And so, and like you said, you leave that play and the book with maybe some hope, thinking, oh, things are going to go well,
yeah,
and then out comes Snitchland. You're like, wah wah wah, So
exactly. Um, Now I know from the first book you had written it as a play first, and then you made a graphic novel. Was that the same thing for this one? Did you write another continuing of the play, and then you're like, obviously, I know I'm going to write this as a playwright, but then I'm going to also do graphic novel, or did you reverse the process?
I did. It's a strange, I'd say, path that I've chosen, but I love plays. I love live
Yeah.
events. I love immersive events. So it's not your typical play. It's like a fun experience. But I enjoyed so much writing Witchland first as a play, and then I wrote a follow up, and then it was after, and that's what I set out to do. But then I realized the way to reach a wider audience, and also I love comics and I love graphic novels. I thought if I could, these are perfect for graphic novels. They're dark, and they're serialized, and you can make a series of them, and I can continue these stories whether or not these ever get seen on stages or immersive experiences. The graphic novels will live on, and I can
Yeah.
reach a whole new audience. So to answer your question, I've written the trilogy is written as plays because I'd love it if they got staged. The dream is that have some down the road, some immersive theater company do like all three of them kind of
Yeah.
in repertory or something. We could go see Witchland, Snitchland, and the next one's called Twitchland, and it'd be like a fun hodgepodge of this family and scary stories. And then I converted them to graphic novel. I think that's it's worked out really well for me to write it first in, kind of a script. And then once that is perfected, then I put my graphic novel writer hat on and adapt that script into all the boxes of a graphic novel. And how do I convert that?
Definitely. And you might be one of the few writers that, as you write yours into a play, and maybe even the play or immersive experience comes first before the graphic novel comes out, kind of getting that visual cue behind the scenes and seeing it enacted, you could kind of look at the artwork and be like, seeing this live, maybe I would change this in the graphic novel or the art direction because it translates well to stage, but graphic novel, maybe it doesn't. I could change some things around.
Completely. I mean, I think write the script first. You can, I write it thinking of what could work on a stage, and so you kind of stick with like say one
Yeah.
set or a couple different, like the kitchen of a house, or in Snitchland, a lot of it happens at this at the restaurant where where they all kind of congregate. So but then you take it to graphic novel world and you can expand upon that, and you can show the whole town, and you can show what the town is like, and build in scenes and graphics and visuals that weren't there before. So yeah, I always I write it first just thinking, how is this going to be theatrically, and how could you make a really scary fun live experience, and then how can you make a really cool visual experience. I mean, I wrote a play in this world that it's done. It's called Bitchland. It's a bitchy version of Witchland,
Mm.
and it just doesn't work as a graphic novel because
Yeah,
it's not. It's more of an immersive experience that you have to be there for. So you have to kind of really think about which is going to lend itself well to a comic book or graphic novel genre.
yeah. Well, it's funny too. I was thinking about this because immersive graphic novels and immersive comics are starting to kind of come back again,
Mhm.
where people put soundtracks to a book and
Uh,
they have you play the soundtrack. And I said, man, if he has a play and a soundtrack, would you ever consider almost taking the written dialogue or a recording of your actors or kind of the actual like kind of playlist from the play and putting it with your graphic novel as an immersive reading
Well,
experience?
believe me, I love that idea. I mean, when I wrote Witchland, the play, a friend of mine is a great musician, and so we created the original soundtrack, and I copyrighted it, and I own that. I'm trying to get it on Spotify now because it's awesome music. And so when I present it to a theater to do an immersive experience, as I have this music you can use. It's really cool
Yeah.
and creepy. So, and now as I get into Snitchland and the next ones, and even when I put stuff on social media, I can now think I could take sound bites, like you
Yeah.
said, from the stage versions. I can use this music. So yeah, I'm trying to kind of explore some new territory there with this mashup between the different channels of bringing the story to light.
Definitely. And like I said, I mean, I think it's great. Obviously, you have a plan for it. As soon as I was reading the second part, and obviously we know there's going to be a third part. We'll talk about the end, but
Mhm.
uh, all I could think of is putting this out as like a big graphic novel collection, like the Hanford Compendium, just like this big giant,
The
like
World of
dark book.
Witchland. It's called The
Yeah,
World of Witchland. Yeah.
there we go.
I mean, I wrote it as a trilogy, but believe me, I'm already thinking of a fourth. So I'm kind of blows it out of the water. So yeah.
Perfect. Now one of the always, I think the most striking part of your graphic novel, and I don't know if this was inspired from again seeing this kind of acted out, is the artwork. I don't know if you know the artist person. I mean, obviously, you have a pretty good relationship now because I'm assuming it's the same person or it's the same artist doing the same artwork.
Oh, it is. I mean, I don't know him personally. I hired him. I
Yeah.
did a search. I put it on Upwork, and
Okay.
I looked at, and I had people applying from around the world, which was super
Yeah.
fun. And I got to see all the works that they did. And I kind of took a leap of faith with this guy, Pyrink, out of Mexico City, and he's just amazing. His work is so beautiful, and he gets the story. He loves the story. He loves the characters. I think he's really fascinated by the Hanford story in Witchland, the Richland Witchland story, and but yeah, and he's so fun to work with. I mean, I just send him the story, and what he comes back with these visuals that are exactly how I had it in my mind. So it really is an amazing collaboration. And we go back and forth, of course, on character development and location development, and a graphic novel or a comic, like which I'll send it back and say, this is an awesome visual, it's beautiful. This should be a full page. This should be a piece
Yeah.
of art. Let's blow this one up. Or you have a series of small ones. It's kind of a dance there of which how you lay out the page, and so we go back and forth on all of that. But he's really great. He's done all three of the books.
Okay. Yeah, and I was about to say the one thing that's really nice about the artwork is we've kind of moved away. I think in the comic scene, everyone's trying to be a lot more nuanced, watercolors and whatnot. And that even for me, hard line drawing with very defined deep like outlines. I was like, I've seen Marvel do it, I've seen DC do it. I'm away from it. For your story though, I actually prefer it because I feel like it gives it almost like a solid footing looking at it, especially when I'm seeing like characters that have the outline. Your ghost doesn't really have like that hard of an outline. um, I think it works really well, and that's
Thank
surprising
you.
because it's usually one thing that I don't, it's not my favorite. It just doesn't resonate with me anymore. Seeing just like really bold lines, but I like the way your artist does it because I feel like it highlights where he
Thank you.
wants you to look in the story.
Yeah, I mean, when I, he nailed Witchland, especially all the dark scenes of
Yeah.
ritualistic scenes in witchcraft, and some of the other writers who illustrators and designers, they backed out because they didn't feel comfortable with the occult and some of the supernatural elements, and or witchcraft freaked them out especially. But he jumped right in. But to your point, I was really not sure how ghosts would translate. There's so many ghosts in this story, and how do you draw a ghost when you can't see a ghost? And I just gave him some ideas, like maybe they're black and white, maybe they're not, like you said, they're not the same outline
Yeah.
of a body. And he just nailed it. I just love how the ghosts look in this book. It's exactly, I couldn't have pictured it any better, to be honest.
Yeah. And I was always wondering too, since he has all this beautiful art and you put a lot of work and time into this art in this book, when you go to do a play and you're trying to put like something on the marquee or a little like poster up, do you now use like the artwork from the book itself to illustrate, or do you still do a separate kind of a poster for the play?
Yeah, I've done. It's a great question. The branding for this world of Witchland, which is the trilogy Witchland, Snitchland, Twitchland. The main posters are done, and the covers. I did let Pyrink though take a variation of the play poster. He also created the covers of the books, and that's his own twist on the original cover. Um, but where it gets fun is like in social media and stuff, where I can actually
Yeah,
pull stills from the book, and I can use the actual poster from the plays, and I can mix and match and do whatever I want with it. And so now when the plays happen, the books can get sold at the play, and it's just a lot of it's really fun.
definitely. Now I know last time you were here, we always ask, what's the one thing that you learned that you could share with people? Obviously, you had your first graphic novel. This time we'll change it up though a little bit. Do you feel like there's anything that you definitely improved on going from one graphic novel now to the next with a lot more experience under your belt?
Oh yeah, I mean, I continue to learn. This is all new for me, but I'd say Witchland graphic novel. I mean, just the fact that I never thought it would even get done. It's just an idea that I had, and
Yeah,
I really learned a lot about kind of tenacity, but also how the semantics of a graphic novel and the logistics and working with the publisher. So I'd say now with it was just a whole lot smoother with Snitchland. I I was much more comfortable with the process and kind of going back and saying this would be a great chapter. You think about what the chapter pages, and I
Yeah.
always like a theme for those. So I was really comfortable with how that should look. Um, you know, a lot of Snitchland happens during the day, which didn't really happen as much at Witchland. So I felt much more comfortable kind of expanding the story. And I think Pyrink and I continue to work well, and we're learning each other more. So we had a much smoother back and forth. I think the part I'm learning the most is kind of the business side of it.
Yeah.
Because it's really hard. I work full time. This is not my full time job, and so I'm trying to juggle it all. But getting a play out there is hard enough. But the graphic novel, dealing with the Amazons and the
Yeah.
publishers and publicity, which I love doing, but doing it all as a one person show is I'm getting a little better at it, but it's all new to me.
Yeah. No, it's a lot.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing, I think the biggest improvement. Now, granted, you had a lot of story to tell in the first one. You really had to set the scene for what you're building. Pacing. I think for this one, you gave just enough to break in between the chapters, to clear defined chapters. Biggest thing was just how many panels per chapter.
Yeah.
I feel like you only had like maybe 3 to 4 fun panels, but then everything else was really story driven. Really giving us enough detail, but not too much detail to keep us moving. And that's a hard thing to do.
Oh, that's really nice. That's great to hear. I feel like that's something I continue to work on. I think even now that the third one is about to get done, I think it's even tighter. And the third one is like kind of balls to the wall, scary, fast, crazy, dark. And so I really wanted kind of a different theme for each one. And Snitchland is more of a kind of a loving ghost story with this whistleblower environmental mystery at the heart. So there is kind of a different tone, and you have to kind of write and have the illustrations support that tone.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the best things about this trilogy, and this story is we started off Witchland more of a history book at anything, with a story kind of on the side about the occult, but more, about the city. And now we moved into the second book, and well, now it's the whole city. The company itself is behind it. They're trying to cover it up. And now, obviously, as we talk about the third book soon here, now we're in the ending of the second one. I didn't really see that coming. Obviously, it's going to really take the whole town by storm, considering what's happening. The pacing of going from like almost from mild to 60 right away, I think is also another great thing in storytelling, because again, you see a whole story being told.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, in a lot of this, I mean, it's pretty. I did, like I said, a lot of research on the first book. I did a lot of research on the history of Hanford and the whistleblowers and the creation of Hanford and those lawsuits. The second book, I just read. There's a couple great recent books out there about whistleblowers, and there's a lot of dedicated stories to Hanford. So you could go online and just research, the current state of Hanford, and you'll see the fact that there's all this toxic waste buried in these tanks that are leaking, and the government's just putting billions into trying to stop the leaking so it doesn't hit the river. It would also protect the residents of the area because it's a beautiful place. And they're not I don't know. I'm not an expert by any means on, what to do with 50 million gallons of nuclear
Waste.
nuclear waste, but it's like I don't know if anyone is. So uh yeah, but I think that it's amazing if you to hear the people's stories of what they allege or what they say happened when they try to bring some forward. I actually talked to some whistleblowers. I know some but I'm not saying names, but and I knew years ago I had friends' parents who did talk to me about it because I was a lawyer back in the day and came and I in that area, and there are questions about, I think that my phone's being tapped and I think I'm being followed and these kind of things. Those rumors and stories have been out there for years, So I just thought that it lends itself well to a dark story, and I'm surprised no one else has written stories about it yet.
Yeah, definitely. It was a first for me when I read Witchland. That kind of led me down the rabbit hole to look more into it.
Yeah.
Before we talk about Twitchland, I'd be more remiss not to ask. Obviously, the books have been out for a little bit now, and I'm assuming your friends and family. Obviously, you want to give them a copy, let them see it. Has Hanford or anyone from your hometown or kind of contact you like, oh, hey, you're writing these books. Would you like to get our side of the story about it? Or I see you're writing this about like this. Has anyone by chance like reached out?
It's a great question. No one from Hanford. I will say I've talked to many people at Hanford. I have a ton of friends out there, you
Yeah.
know. So I've talked to many people and what it's like and what are some of the things that happen now, and they get checked for radiation and they'll send me, uh, screenshots of, hey, we're all on lockdown today. I'm supposed to not leave my office. Like I'm under my desk. I've talked to people. But no one officially from Hanford.
Yeah.
It's a. I'm trying to be sensitive to the fact that um, they're trying. People work out there, they love it there, and it's a beautiful place. And most of my relatives are there, and
Yeah.
so I don't want to slam the place. I
Correct.
actually really enjoyed living there, but there's no secret what's that it's
What's
dangerous,
going on?
So,
Yeah.
but they have not reached out to me. There's been some interesting things, like a theater group reached out to me about doing it there, and that's something I'm looking at, and that's I don't know how that will go.
Yeah.
So we're looking at that. It's finally going to get a run in Seattle, which is
That's
next
awesome.
year, which I think is going to be super interesting for the Washingtonians to see because it's such a Washington story that it's
Yeah.
so and it's timely today. There was a big story in the news just in the last 2 weeks about a leak out there. So things are constantly happening, and I think Oppenheimer brought a lot of this
Yeah.
to the forefront. They talk about Hanford there, and so, and then there is actual groups that for Snitchland in particular, they're lawyer groups or kind of advocacy groups who really just focus their good time to helping victims and whistleblowers. And I did reach out to a few of them, but I didn't really hear an official response. So I'm just doing my thing. No one's, I've had family and friends who don't like it, who've seen it, and like, why are you painting this light? And I keep saying I'm writing a fun story about my
Yeah.
hometown, and it's a hometown that is full of darkness and
Yeah.
history, and it's not all great. So
Yeah. No, I think that's the best thing.
yeah,
History is for whoever beholds that history. No
right,
matter how you
right,
change it. I mean, it's we could live on the same street, but obviously we might see things a lot differently if I'm looking to
completely,
the east and you're looking to the west.
yeah. Hmm.
So yeah, no, I think this book is definitely critical.
Thank you.
Which leads us to the last book. Obviously, we won't talk too much about it because I think everyone listening, you do need to go and read Snitchland because the ending will take you completely by surprise. But before we talk about Twitchland, that last scene where the ghost finally got the guy who was wiretapping the phones, that was like the best moment of justice in this whole story. I was very happy
Yeah,
with that.
thank you. I mean, you got to think about, when you're mashing up real life thriller slash whistleblower with ghosts or supernatural. At some point, I think they should come together and be this fun thing that imagine of, will there be some retribution, some accountability? And that's what I wanted to do in that scene. So thank you.
Yeah, that was fantastic.
Just picture that live. Just picture that live. It'll be really scary.
Exactly, that's gonna be very good. So that brings us to the ending. So we have Twitchland that's coming out in February. Where, as much as you can give us without giving out too much, as we get ready for the third book, what's this going to be? Because obviously this is kind of the penultimate of the trilogy.
Yeah. I wanted, it continues the same group of characters. Brett comes to the forefront here, and he's the young high school now community college kid. But I wanted to think of, I did witches at a nuclear haunted town. I've done ghosts. So I wanted to go all out scary, and so I'm creating my own version of vampire, but also kind of mixing it with the current, state of the drug, because there's some drug issues there, as many small towns or big towns have across America with fentanyl and things like that. So, it just makes sense that somehow the nuclear waste has to get involved with that. So, let's just say that it has to do with toxic bats and bites and addicts, and it's I would say that Snitchland is kind of a, if I had to describe it, it's a mashup between, say, like an Aaron Brockovich type environmental,
Yeah,
whistleblower story with Ghost, and mix those together. Twitchland, I would say it's more like Lost Boys meets Trainspotting. I mean, it's full on, never ending, and it's pretty dark and fun.
Yeah, I was about to say. So was it? I won't want to say it's more fun because I think every book has been fun for you because you get to tell a different part of the story. But was this one more fun being a fan of horror and supernatural, where you could really like, this is the one where I could just let loose if I want to, kill the whole town? I mean, that's like I could end the book that way.
Yeah, and I also tried to bring in some of the elements I love from great comic stories or superhero stories with a villain with an origin story. And
Yeah,
so I have a really, a very meek person who becomes a strong, dark villain with power, and it all happens. And I wanted to show that. And then how do you bring Allie, Allie to the rescue again? So how does she go up against these dark forces when you're talking about toxic waste and some sort of vampire and drugs? And so I always try to mix in some real life, social issues with this fun terror and kind of love that I have of the genre. So
definitely.
hopefully you'll like that. And of course, Twitchland, I say it's a trilogy, but of course, Twitchland, of course, ends with its own Easter eggs of what could happen beyond, and it introduce a whole new monster slash uh, protagonist or antagonist to the mix. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that's the other thing too with writing this book. You've essentially started a universe. I mean, you have your own kind of, Richland Hanford. I mean, it's its own universe. Do you think, as you said, you had ideas for a fourth one? Do you think you would continue this main storyline, or is this something too you would be interested in doing almost a prequel or spin-off story of like maybe the first Hanford time where they knew that they were burying this nuclear waste, and it was maybe like a zombie one where like they originally kept zombies somehow deep down inside, and they said, I wonder if anyone's going to live here.
Well, look, listen, the toxic waste is getting into the dirt. You're bound to make it to a cemetery somehow. So yeah, I think all those are on the table. I have a trilogy done, and I like your idea of packaging it. That's my idea too. You
Yep.
can get the whole series when it comes out early in the year. Um, I want to see where it goes. Like I said, I've already kind of started what could be next, but I've also created some other ones. Like I said, I have
Yep.
this new haunted house. I wanted to write the quintessential haunted house play, which I think will translate well to a graphic novel as well. So I'm continuing. So I'm going to see how the trilogy lands when the whole
Yeah.
thing comes out in February. But I have a new kind of concept coming out as well that, like I said, is the play is done and it's going off Broadway next May. It's called Point Loma, and all of that is on my website. So I'm trying to keep everybody current, on all the projects. So
Definitely. So for everyone listening that is interested in getting in on these tales and getting kind of indoctrinated into the graphic novel, where's the best place to get it? Where's the best place to follow you and stay up to date with this story?
yeah, well, the website is called witchlandplay.com. Has everything. It has Witchland, Snitchland, Twitchland, Point Loma, plays, graphic novels, the backstory stuff about me, the history. That's all on the website witchlandplay.com, and you can also order books, buy tickets for shows that are upcoming. On social, it's really Insta and Facebook. The handle is Witchland Play, and you can and we keep those up to date as well.
That's awesome. Yeah. And I mean, it's a great time being Halloween, having these types of books out. I think it's just, I mean, it's not bad. And as I tell people, like, if you put a horror story out in January, like, we just kind of got me off Christmas, I guess. Like, people are going to be still in the holiday mood, but when you put like all the scary movies and stuff in October, there's something about it, just reading it in that month. I think that adds that extra, just that little bit of kind of belief in it
Yeah,
almost.
thank you. I think so. I mean, Witchland right now, that came out in February of this year, so that's available. You can get that now through Amazon Prime. Get it right away. It's in hardback or paperback. Snitchland's available for pre-order right now. It officially is published on October 29th, but it's on Barnes and Noble, Amazon, any online retailer. You can pre-order it now, but you'll have it in your hands by Halloween.
Awesome. So for everyone listening, we'll have all that linked up in the show notes on here on YouTube and on Instagram if you're looking at our Instagram post. Tim, thank you for coming on. It was great to read the second part. We're looking forward to having you back for the third. This is a great story, and we just look forward to watching it grow.
I'm so glad you liked it. Great. Thank you so much, Ryan, and everybody for tuning in. I hope you enjoy it.
All right, everyone listening, we hope you had fun. If you are watching this on YouTube, hit subscribe. If you are on our Instagram or Spotify, hit the follow button. Everyone listening, have a good night.
Thank you.